In this special edition of AA Illustrates, I'm excited to be joined by SVP of Product, Steve Shah, as we geek out and talk about some of the new capabilities of Automation Anywhere. Many of you know I'm a developer evangelist at Automation Anywhere, but really I'm a huge fanboy of Automation Anywhere's products. And so this is an exciting opportunity for me to get to talk to Steve, have this conversation, and share it with all of you. Steve.
Thanks, Micah.
Thanks
I
so
am
much.
excited to be. This is like an honor to be on your show.
You're the one who's done a lot of really cool stuff, and I'm really excited to talk about this.
Well, let's talk about it.
Yeah. So the first is related kind of more generally to Automation 360, but having previously led a development team, I know that one of the issues people would always talk about is like, I don't want to get a new laptop because setting up my IDE is a huge problem. There's libraries and dependencies I have to worry about. Automation 360 is completely web-based development experience. Talk to me a bit about the decision to go that route, because I've always thought that was really interesting, and it's actually a really great experience now.
Absolutely, it was a big one because we had a lot of folks who were really invested in the old interface. They were familiar with it. It was comfortable. It was really responsive, and they were worried as soon as you go web, is it going to be slow and laggy and all of these other problems? But we were adamant that this is where development's going to go. And sure enough, this is something that we've seen across the board. You now see Visual Studio is all web-based. All of the modern editor tools are all web-based. This is how we're going to build code from now on. What started that conversation was the whole experience that a person has and the process of getting updates. Because when you get into big enterprises, big companies do not like changing laptops. They don't like doing updates. When you cannot do an update, that means that you get stuck on old versions. That was the problem. And so how do we go and share all the cool new stuff that we're building, latest versions, new tools, new things to try, while not having to worry about this update cycle? Web was the answer. Web was kind of the obvious answer. The thing that made me not worry about it was that modern web development is totally unlike the old days, right? So if you remember life pre-2005, 2006, before we had the epiphany and Ajax came around, right? Yeah, of course everything was slow. You clicked on something and it went back to the server and came back. All of that is now gone. So you have these really interactive experiences, and our experience is no different. When you're editing, when you're in the middle of a process, all of that happens in browser. So like it's all JavaScript running inside of the browser. The whole experience is there. It's not until you do something like save that it actually goes and has to talk to the server. So that's one big thing. The second part that really kind of brought the stress down is we use a content delivery network. So if you're not familiar with content delivery networks, these are services, a big company like Akamai or Fastly, they're the big names in this space. But what they do is they have got a global network of servers that are all over the place that take care of caching for us. So there is always a cached copy of all of our tools that are sitting somewhere close to you, even if you are in a far-flung part of the world that you think, oh, hey, I'm kind of far away from the US connectivity. Is that a problem? Not a problem, because I guarantee you there's a server in your country. So that has been a big part of what's made this whole thing successful. It's why we wanted to do it, and it's why we're going to continue investing in web and web technologies.
One of the really cool things I think that comes with that is the way that automations are designed, right? So I build out an automation, it's based on very specific versions of specific packages. And that remains unchanged even when there's new updates to that package or things like that. Can you talk some about the foresight you had to think through that ahead of time? Because I wouldn't have thought of that, right? But it makes the platform much more stable. And specifically my automations that I built a year ago, they still work.
Yeah, and it's a problem, right? And part of that hesitation in doing an upgrade is I upgrade and my packages break. So very early on in the release cycle for A360, what we did was we versioned our packages. And so if you go back to the oldest versions, that's always been the case. And when you version packages, what we could do is say, this bot is using this version of a package. So when new updates would come down, you weren't having to pick up those new updates unless you said default to the latest package, right? Now, remember, the default setting is to default to the latest package, right? So you do have to explicitly set that. We wanted to give that control to the developer.
Yeah.
But having done that, you're now in this great controlled environment. So new changes come down, new updates come down. You can't test it right now because it's end of quarter. You got a bunch of other stuff to do. Don't worry about it. The bot's not going to break if you've named the version. So afterward, when you do have time, you can try out the new feature, say, hey, this applies to me. I'd benefit from it. It works great the way I want it to. Let me go ahead and adopt it. And now it's a very sort of controlled process for how that works.
Got it.